CBA number 4, practice. All right, here's how we tackle the CBA. So here we have two rectangles. They are similar. They are similar because they are proportional. Well, here's what I mean. 4 times a proportion will give you 12. So if we want to know what the value of B is, then we can use that proportion and 24 to help figure out what B is. So here's what I mean. If you take a look over here, we went from the narrow side being 4 centimeters to 12 centimeters. We scaled up. Well, we also did the same thing in the same relative amount. We used the same proportion to go from whatever B was to 24. The thing about this problem is we do not know what B is. We're going to find that out. So here's how we do this. All right. So (12 divided by 4) equals 24 divided by B. So let's take a look on how we can solve this problem. Essentially what we're saying is whatever we use to increase 4 to 12, we're going to take whatever B is and increase that to 24 by the same rate. So if we take 12 divided by 4, this is going to give us 3. So if we take and substitute 3 and place it at B, this is going to give us 8. So what we're saying is B is 8. Now let's prove that. 4 times 3 equals 12. 8 times 3 equals 24. So the proportion 3, that is what we use to increase our original dimension to the larger dimension. Number 2, fish species. We have 6 species of fish and the number of fish that were caught. So this represents last summer's haul from Mr. Brennenberg. All right. The thing about this is we want to go ahead and figure out which of these 4 statements are true. So we are going to look at the probability. Now there's a total of 50 fish that were caught. So 10 of 50 were trout. 12 of 50 were salmon. Whatever this number here that we actually caught, that's how many out of the total. So we can represent each one of these fish as a probability of what I would catch next if I went to fish in the same places. Okay, so let's take a look at 8. the probability of catching trout is greater than catching a shark? Well, here's a shark, here's a trout. It's not greater, it's equal to. So we can eliminate that. B, the probability of catching a shark is less than the probability of catching a bluegill. So, 10 sharks, 8 bluegill. No, the probability of catching a shark is greater. Let's skip down to D. The probability of catching a catfish is greater than the probability of catching a fish other than a catfish. And that is false, because out of all the fish, catfish were the least caught. So it is not greater than. All right, we only have C left. And a lot of people would say, well, that must be the answer. But we need to evaluate that answer, because if we find that that answer would be false, then we have 4 false answers, and so somewhere something went wrong. And that gives us a clue whether to try these problems again, or if it does prove to be true, then we know we have the right answer. The probability of catching a redfish is equal to the probability of catching a bluegill. And we see the redfish, it's 8 out of 50, and bluegill is 8 out of 50. So, yes, C is the correct answer. Number 3, a 6-sided die was rolled 24 times. After each roll, the number on top was recorded. And so, in this hypothetical example, turns out that 3 showed up 0 times. That's just kind of an odd way that this thing worked out. What we want to know is, what was the experimental probability that the next roll of the die will be a 2? Well, out of 24, how many were 2? 6. So 6 out of 24. We can simplify this, and the way we simplify is we want to find the largest number that will divide into the numerator and the denominator evenly. So I like to take the numerator, and I want to see if the denominator is a multiple of that numerator, and it is. So therefore, I'm going to divide both the top and the bottom by 6, and that's going to give me 1/4. Then I can build my decimal and my percent. Number 4, Juan earned a performance bonus that would increase his hourly wage from $12 to $15. What was the percent increase in his hourly wage? Okay, so we did this in Unit 3. We're going to do this again. It's that important. So let's take the percent increase formula. So the new amount minus the original amount we're going to divide that by the original amount. And if we will remember, the original amount is what we start with. So from 12, that's the original amount. So that must mean 15 is the new amount. So here we have 15 minus 12 divided by 12, and that equals a decimal. And we're going to multiply that times 100%. So we have 3/12. That equals 0.25 times 100%, and that's going to give us a percent increase of 25%. Number 5. A scale on a set of home construction plans uses a scale of 1 inch equals 10 feet. What is the actual length of the house? If the drawing is 8.5 inches. Well, so 1 inch of the drawing equals 10 feet. And the drawing is 8.5 inches. So what did we have to do to 1 to make it 8.5? The easy way of figuring that out is take the 8.5 and divide by 1. That gives you 8.5. You can then take this proportion and you can multiply the proportion times 10 feet. And that's going to give you an actual distance or an actual length of 85 feet. Number 6. I think I'm going to fix this a little bit. It's not as clear as I would have liked. Okay. Okay. So there we are. So there are a couple ways that we could evaluate a geometric shape. One is to use the interior angles. That's the angles inside here. But we don't have those angles. We can also measure the length. Now, we can tell that one of these sides is short and the other one is long. Now the thing with similar figures, you don't have to have them oriented the same way. So if we look at these two, the smaller has the long edge oriented more or less vertical. And the larger has the long edge oriented more or less horizontal. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So we just label. So we could see that A to D over here, A to D, that's the long edge, and A to B, that's the short edge. So I could say AD divided by AB equals MP divided by MN. Because what we're saying is long divided by short. Now, I don't know what AD is, and I don't know what AB is, nor do I know MP or MN, but I do know that the short edge and the long edge, and I can set them up in a relationship together. I do know that. And so, if I said that these are congruent, they're proportional to one another, how can you show that they are congruent? Would you use the angles or sides? You would use the sides. And then you would describe how they are congruent by setting up that statement right there. All right, number 7. Mr. B buys a pre-made bouquet of flowers for Mrs. B on his way home. What is the probability of having each kind of flower in the bouquet? Well, as it turns out, there are a total of 20 flowers. I'm going to make this a little nicer. There are a total of 20 flowers. 5 out of 20 are roses. 12 out of 20 are carnations. And 3 out of 20 are lilies. Number 8, Stephanie purchased a tool she needed at work that was discounted 30% from the original price. Oh, we did this last unit. We'll do this again. The original price was $150. What was the price after the discount? And if we remember, the way we approach this is number 1, determine the dollar amount of the discount. And then number 2, subtract the dollar amount of the discount from the price. So let's do that. We have $150 times 0.3, because that is the decimal equivalent of 30%. This gives us $45. So if we take the 150 and we subtract the $45, that's going to give us $105. $105 is the price after the discount. Number 9. At a basketball game, 4 out of the first 12 spectators wore a hoodie. If 240 spectators came to the game, how many could be expected to wear, or how many could we expect to wear a hoodie? Okay? So we're saying 4 out of the first 12. And that's going to give us a fraction. And we can multiply that times 240 over 1. So, probably the easiest way to handle this, we could go ahead and cross cancel and all that. But to me, 4/12, it's easier to just simplify that fraction and then take that fraction times the 240. So we would end up with 240 divided by 3. because 1 times 240 is 240. 3 times 1 is 3. If we do the division, we simplify this improper fraction, we would find out that 80 spectators could be expected to wear a hoodie. And number 10. So Amanda is making trail mix. The ratio is 2 ounces of almonds to 4 ounces of dried fruits. So there is a total of 6 ounces. But only 2 ounces are almonds. Now we want to know how much would be almonds. So we know there's a total of 6 in a serving, and 2 out of those 6 ounces are going to be almonds. So this works out to be a third. I like to simplify the fraction. And then we're going to multiply that fraction times the total amount we want to end up with. And so we end up with, we'll simplify that. We end up with 10 ounces. So, make sure you have your notes ready on the sheet that I handed out today. Bring that with you for the quiz, and we'll get ready for the CBA.